الله يسعدكم دائما زي ما بتسعدوا الناس.
Thank you so much. May Allah reward you and accept your efforts.
Lebanon is facing lots and lots of crises since last year, coronavirus. This donation of yours will be so benefit for them, inshallah. Will put food on their tables during Ramadan. Barakallah fikum and shukran lakum.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Chat Minus the Chai. I'm your sister Shamoly Hoque-Noorudeen. If this is the first time you're viewing, well, let me fill you in on what we do. I sit down with some special guests on Human Age UK every Saturday for Ramadan, 4 p.m. to have a chat with you guys. So I need you to get involved. Give me your salams. Let me know you're watching. If you find it benefit, share on words with others. And we minus the chai because we hope that the chat is of enough depth and substance. And then, of course, as we should with everything, we try and bring it back to our Islam. Yes, inshallah, that's it. That's who we are. That's what we are. So what are we talking about today? It's in the title. Online. There it comes. Online world, the benefits and accountability. I mean, I think the online world gets a lot of flack, doesn't it? But it's not going anywhere. And I think COVID really showed us that. And alhamdulillah, COVID for many was actually a lifeline to allow some form of normality to carry on through the online world, be it schools, work, social connections. So I have not one, but two special guests today. Farhana Hussein, who is a pharmacologist by profession. She's also there she is, a home educator to teens, I believe 3 teens. Am I right? 4 teens. 4 teens, mashallah. And she's a youth project coordinator and they were offline, but I know Farhana will expand on this later, took a lot of things online and that interaction there. And alongside her, I have Dr. Shagufta Malik, who is, here she comes, who is an author and illustrator. She's made, she's written and has illustrated an awesome book called 7 is Special, about a young girl who is trying to navigate all the obstacles that come about when praying. It's suitable for both boys and girls, even if it's a pink cover. So don't worry about that, guys. And so check out her book. She's also a home educator to 3 teens, and she's done approximately 22 decades worth of dawah in the community with women and youth. And Farhana, not too dissimilar. They've both done dawah activities offline, taken a lot of things online. And I think one of the keys that's we're going to start with the benefits. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about all the activities that you have done, Farhana, if you want to let me know, and how you've utilized the world online in a beneficial manner. And is it really fair of all the slack that social media gets? So let's do that.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, Shamoly, Sister Shagufta, and all the audience as well watching. I think 2020, you're right, absolutely changed everything, literally turned everything on its head. So a lot of our youth stuff obviously has always been face-to-face. Everything went online basically, and then came the world of social media. So initially it was a bit of a shock. We learned a lot and had to do a lot of adapting as expected to online presenting, but mashallah, the experience has been really interesting. It's continuing to be interesting. We've got girls that come on from all over the world, mashallah, so that's been really fantastic. And I think generally as well, what you're saying about it's provided people with a bit of a lifeline. COVID, people need support, people need to connect. And actually, with there's always positives and negatives with things. But, even within my circle, sisters found groups to, hang out with online, like, motherhood support, or, to talk about certain, anxiety or even loneliness, personally, I did, I'm a home educator, so I like to go on. I did my home educating thing. But just generally, Islamic knowledge, Islamic learning platforms that previously, you'd have to book a ticket to go over there. Everything has come online. Everything's much more accessible. So that's been, really good. And obviously meeting new people, I say virtually, Shamoly, mashallah, alhamdulillah. And even for my children, YouTube is revision, YouTube is for knowledge, and for gaming, and even things like LinkedIn, which is a professional platform, and even they're having lots of debates and discussions as well. So I think social media has definitely taken a different turn in the last year.
Jazakallah khair. Yeah, absolutely. We did actually connect online. Alhamdulillah. I'm glad that you mentioned social connections. We were having a meeting, and due to, in my field, we have monthly supervision just because of how heavy the work can be. And it was really interesting because a lot of people are feeling very, very isolated. And I was, and I didn't want to get really preachy Muslim because it was a virtual room full of non-Muslims. But I know myself, I found actually the social connections had heightened because recognizing what the online world could or couldn't provide, especially at a time when we're away from each other. And also what you mentioned, mashallah, about the work you're doing with young girls as well. And like you said, all over the world. I forget, growing up in East London, super lucky. All the institutions, all the courses, they're on my doorstep. It's not like that. I'm thinking about new reverts and just accessing, and even ease of accessing courses and things like that. So Shagufta, as mentioned, you're a home educator, and I know that you use Instagram for your page. Check it out, guys, Muslim Family of 5. So you kind of document actually your insight on all of that. So again, please don't be modest and tell us about how you've been using it in a beneficial manner, inshallah.
Okay. Jazakallah khair. A'udhu billahi min shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My relationship with social media has been one of come and go. I knew when I first started writing my book that I would need to be on social media to promote it, but I had concerns. Some of the things that I hope we will bring out in today's discussion. So I actually very shyly and safely started posting about food. So if you look at my Instagram, the first few hundred posts are just very safe food posts. I was easing myself into it. And then as my book launched, a lot of my posts became about the book and also about home educating. And then I actually took a very conscious break. However, as Farhana said, last year when the pandemic hit and as lockdowns were introduced, I found that all of the activity that I was involved with in the community, whether that's youth groups, book clubs, women's circles, activities at the local mosque, they all stopped. And so it's inevitable I had to come online. And as I was researching for today's presentation, I found that in 2020, there was actually a massive surge in the number of people who came online, specifically in 2020. It was like a 13.2 increase of year on year compared to previous year's growth of 7.2%. And I was amongst those people. Things that I could no longer do in person, I made a conscious decision to get back onto social media and try and do some of it there.
Inshallah. Well, we're very happy that you did come on board and we get to see you both today. I think I'm of the generation that I was always really pro, like, there are issues there and we are going to touch upon that. And guys, I really want your thoughts. You pro online or you pro offline? It should be off there in the corner. Ironic question, given all of this is happening on social media. But alhamdulillah, that was definitely something that came out. Whilst I've always been on it, that was something new that came about last year due to COVID, the offline disconnect. And definitely a lot of barakah came about in having these conversations with an audience that perhaps I may not have had with otherwise. But I've always been very pro. So when COVID happened, I was like, see, I told you guys, we need to be on there. We need to get moving. So I'm going to pose this question to both of you guys. I'll go with you, Farhana, first. Sometimes it's kind of looked at like online is the original fitna. It's like there are issues, but it's almost looked as it is the issue, or it's just deteriorating away our deen, or it's just a place too difficult to navigate. Is that really the case? I'd love to hear your thoughts, Farhana, and I'd love to hear yours as well, Shagufta. And you guys, conversation. Oh, halwa, I've been definitely pro online, alhamdulillah. It's so versatile, especially if you're multitasking. So yes, Farhana, if you tell us first about, is social media the original fitna?
Yes, is it the original? Well, I mean, something that you mentioned before, Shamoly, is social media is here to stay, and I think that is quite, that idea is quite secure, and the fact that it's constantly evolving as well. I mean, you just have to. I mean, if you just go on your app store, to be honest with you, and you're going to find loads of different types of social media platforms. We might be only on, like, even for myself, maybe like 6 or 7. Potentially, I don't even know, maybe it's less than that, maybe more, I don't know. But the point is that it's here to say each one is coming with their own USP as well. So there is a market out there for that, and the fact that it's becoming more and more accessible for anyone to use. So it's, this idea of fitna or not, it is a genuine concern. And the main thing is about the fact that, when you look at what fitna is, it's basically a way of luring or tempting us, away from something that's good, from the deen, something that's going to take you away from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what He's commanded from you. And I think the thing is that it also gives you that feeling of, a bit of disorder, or some kind of unrest. You can get that as well from social media as well. So naturally, I think we want to kind of stay away from it. And in the Quran as well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala references many times, describing the kinds of tests that we have, the kind of temptations that we're going to be going through. And, even within that, Allah uses, children and wealth as an example. So, are we going to say that children are the fitna or that wealth is a fitna? No, because it's an emphasis that's put on the fact that it's to do with the value or the thing that's going to take, that potentially those things can do, that's going to take you away from the remembrance of Allah. And I think this is where the distinction is, which is, it's not about the thing in itself. It's about what is it about social media? What is it about phones? What is it about TV? What is it about all of these kind of devices or things that can potentially, you can do a lot of good with it, you can benefit from it, but at the same time, potentially you can do a lot of harm with it as well. So I think the way we need to view it is, let's establish what is fitna and actually put it in the right place. And I think the other thing is how we interact with the content are things that we need to be thinking about. Who are we interacting with as well? Are we going to be the same face to face, or are we going to hide behind, that sort of keyboard warrior syndrome that people talk about? Are we clear about the limits that Allah has put on us as well? Do we go into that virtual space armed, on like that high alert, as they say? And the fact that huge. I mean, Shagufta, I think you're going to talk about. You've mentioned it already about the surge in the amount of people online. I think we're looking at over 50% of the population that are already online. So a lot of it is going to be youth as well. So we need to sort of assess this situation much more closely.
Inshallah. Jiba Mohammed says, great for dawah, networking, and keeping ties. However, so many cons as well. Trivial discussions, detachment from reality sometimes, as well as pressure on kids to look a certain way. And Khalwa bint Azwar says, it's like the TV. It can be used in an informative way, or you can be a couch potato. We know that, especially with the onset of Netflix, Amazon Prime. I remember Farhana mentioned about on average, when we were prepping for this, on average, the 7 social media. And I was like, 7? Really? But then, yes, when you think about it, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Signal, and each does have its place. You've got kind of Facebook that is now going maybe to an older generation, or the generation we're getting older on Facebook. You've got Instagram very much for millennial. You've got TikTok, that's for Gen Z. But sometimes it always seems like the one generation is looking to the next generation social media and calling that one the fitna. So Shagufta, I just want to ask you kind of the same question. And I know we spoke behind the scenes about when the printing press came about, and is social media being looked at in the same way? So if you give us a bit of background and your thoughts on that. Does it deserve the flag it's getting?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, one of the things that did come to my mind when you approached us to discuss this is, people could have, and maybe did say the same thing about the printing press many, many years ago. But as Muslims, we've been given Islam as a way of life, a clear way and a path. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, in Surah Maida, that we have assigned a law, a shariatan, and a path, wa minhajan, to each of you. So Islam has answers to all of the different realities we might face throughout our life, and has a process in place to extract both the law and the path that we must follow in any new reality. And that, we know, is the process of ijtihad, to study the different sources of law and extract the law. And this is how we come to understand whether something is permitted for us or not. So both the printing press and social media, they're tools. They're tools that we can use in our daily lives. And people, people's initial fear would be right. The printing press has, we know, been used to spread a lot of fitna, but at the same time, it's been used to spread a lot of good. And we need to, I think, make the distinction that it's not the printing press itself which is the source of the fitna or the source of the good. It's actually society itself which is the source. And social media is a reflection of that society. It's like a mirror unto the world. And a thought came to me over the past few days where I looked at it and I thought, it's not actually a simple mirror. It's a bit like the hall of mirrors. You see at the fairground when you go to the fun fairs, where you enter this hall of mirrors and everything can be a little bit distorted because the mirrors are warped. So it's undeniable that, yes, social media is a representation of those values we see in society around us. And sometimes they can be exaggerated, sometimes they can be distorted, sometimes it's much more intense. You go onto social media in a very, very short space of time, we are exposed to, very, very magnified, concentrated views of things, which can encompass everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So it is hard to not be affected by this, because it's actually designed to be more and more stimulating. I've found over the past 10 years, what started off as, just digital words, the printed word and still pictures. Instagram has been through this as well. It's moved to now being animated words and audio and videos, and stories were introduced. So it's actually designed to excite all of our senses more and more. And, sometimes they can be positive and sometimes they can be negative, because as humans, we're all susceptible to this.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. And I think, Farhana, what you said about that ayah, about we will try you with wealth and children, and it's never a case of, okay, no, we hide away. It's not befitting of the Muslim to just hide away. There has to be a time that if this life is a test, we face the test and work out how to pass it, inshallah. So the one thing that can't be overlooked, that there are some serious issues with social media. For those of you that tuned in last week, and here's a reminder, you can call in, guys. I do want to hear your voices. I want you guys to get involved, comment, let us know. The call-in number, are we able to get it? Well, let me see if I got it memorized, guys. I do not have it memorized. But if you do want to call in, it is 0208 6388 575. But again, carry on, letting us know your thoughts. So last week we spoke about mental health, and one of the things that came about was we looked into mental well-being. If you missed the show, you can check it out on the YouTube. The recordings stay up there. And there was this idea of increasingly, we're seeing more issues with well-being or low-level depression, anxiety, and sometimes people turn around and say, "But you have it all. So how can you be affected?" And I think that kind of pretense of having it all, or what we define success as, has definitely been amplified on social media. There's with the onset of lifestyle blogging, influencers, we've seen even quotes about even Ramadan and people saying, "Don't worry, parents, you don't have to keep up with what's being put on Instagram." That whole notion of keeping up with the Joneses, or what historically would be the middle class 2.4 children, is really there in your face consistently. And if we talk about our companions, let's be honest, our phone is our fifth companion. It's always in the hand, it's social media, it's there. And where normally we would come into the world, shut our door away to the world, that veil's been removed. There's also been research about how more hours spent on spent on social media impacts mental health negatively. There's quite a famous quote that cited, "Comparison is a thief of joy." And actually more hours spent, and what we see is happening on social media, what's pushed out there, is quite high. And younger people, mainly girls, are also getting plastic surgery to look like social media filters. That really scared me. Just that thought of that, like young girls are thinking that their face is not good enough, that it's supposed to look like something that doesn't exist. But this has been around from yonks. It's always mentioned about how models are photoshopped. What models look like is this ideal standard of beauty isn't real, it's actually computerized. But obviously younger people have more access to that. And the same with other arenas, keeping up with the Joneses. So we've kind of touched upon it, but I wanted to ask, is social media maybe, amplified, but is that where these issues stem from? Or actually, is it social media, or is it social? Is it the values that are already there anyway? Because we know materialism is rife. It was rife in the society that we live with even prior to this, but everything being emphasized so much so. So yeah, Tani, is it, I guess that's the question. And you guys tell me as well, is it social media? Is it social? And where do we tackle that issue then? I think she's been muted. Bear with me.
I'm back. I'm here. So I think vulnerable people are really affected, as you said, and you can't really put a category on them. It's not about age or if you're or which gender you are. I think that anybody can be affected by social media, and I think the thing, like you said, about the nature of social media is the fact that I don't know if anybody's watched that Netflix show called The Social Dilemma, and it really goes through this whole the algorithm process, and very when I watched it, I was actually a bit I felt that it was actually quite sinister, the approach, and really sad as well, the way that the impact it's basically had on a lot of on a lot of people, a lot of women actually as well. And as I was sort of preparing for today as well, there's been reports out there where people talk about social media is like a drug, and the thing that makes it addictive is the fact that it's so adaptive. So it basically changes itself, or its algorithms, to give you what it is that you want, that you might be interested in, and so it makes it more interesting, it makes it more enticing, and therefore makes it more addictive. Even this whole you have to sort of keep checking your phone and phone constantly to see if there's any new updates, basically, or who's written the next thing. And when you think about it, it's actually nothing different to what you saw half an hour ago, but it is a bit of a ride. And yeah, like you said, there is those, it does cause all of those things, like the inadequacy, you know, the way you look. You've got these like hashtag couple goals. You've got filters. People are talking about filters a lot. The way they distort things. This kind of oversharing as well. And, you know, things like cyberbullying, and even people have talked about the impacts that it's had on their real life relationships as well. So, like we said, you know, these problems are sort of, they are connected together. They're all interweaving. But like you said, you know, is it a problem that also exists? So is it a problem that only exists in social media, or is it a problem that is actually a reflection of what exists and what existed outside of that space? And I think when you look carefully at that, you know, things like anxiety, depression, like all of these things existed before. You know, when you're talking about, you know, filters and, you know, like this kind of distorted reality, all of those things existed before. Even when it comes to breakdown of relationships, all of those things can also have breakdown in relationships outside of social media as well. So it's not the fact that that is the space that's the problem, but it's really something that Shagufta mentioned earlier before, which is it's that the magnification of the values that are there in society. And, you know, a lot of that is, you know, it could be due to things like, you know, people not feeling like there's a purpose, you know, to why they're here. There is that feeling of, you know, which can lead to, you know, uselessness even. You know, what am I doing? Sort of, you know, 9-to-5 job, come home, what do I do? Or, you know, they might have gone through something difficult in their life as well, and they don't know how to get through that trauma. They don't know what it is that they're gonna, you know, that kind of outlet even. So one is, I think the focus has to be on the values, and we know there's only 2 types of values that we're going to adhere to. It's either going to be Islamic values, it's values that are going to come from, you know, your creator who knows you, understands you, or it's going to be values that are basically made by men, women, doesn't really matter, to be honest with you. And I think that the thing is that we know that these values, such as freedom being the biggest culprit, has actually created so much havoc within society. And all of that is basically being funneled through what you see on social media. And I think this is the kind of crux of it. And then added to that, with this addictive nature, like you said, you are just constantly spending time, you know, browsing. I mean, I do it, browsing, scrolling, TikToking, reeling, I mean, you name it. It's an overload. It's an overload of information, an overload of, you know, of stimulation, basically. And it is having an impact on us, whether we like it or not. You know, people go on social media breaks. They take like a 2-week break, 3-week break, you know, because they need to have that time off. So we're going to be talking about how to navigate social media, obviously, as we go on, you know, for our own well-being. But also, I think, you know, as well, we want to talk a bit about the challenges as well, the way to challenge some of these ideas as well. So actually, let's look at social media as a platform, as a space where we can actually challenge some of these negative ideas and start thinking about how are we going to present what our values are, you know, give them back, put something better out there, put something positive out there, put something that people need basically out there. And inshallah, you know, we take examples from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He came to challenge the issues that were related to society in a time where there was so much hostility, you know, and inshallah, we should sort of hold on to that. And I think as well, sorry, I'm going on, is the fact that there's a lot of discussion and debates happening already as well. So this is not a new discussion. That's basically what I wanted to end in.
Inshallah, and we are going to discuss about how to challenge and make social media or the online world work for us. I think Jiba Mohammed is saying about the comparison aspect is so true. And Arshadullah Khan's watching us from YouTube. Assalamu alaikum. Yasmin Hussein mentions the social media breaks, about how it can waste our time. And in Ramadan, many people just unplug. I'll be honest, guys, after this show, I might just take a break from Facebook. I think we all have that one social media that wanes on us a little bit. And there was a lot of debate and whatnot going on. But as we, Khalwa bint Azwa says, like with any new innovation or craze, social media has its benefits. If you know your purpose in life and have boundaries of haram and halal, and you know your identity and always trying to enhance and develop yourself, you'll be far more grounded and safer than the person who is not sure what his life is about. That's it. Khalwa's answered the whole question. We're cutting the show short now. And that is a very insightful comment, though, and I think it's the crux of it. It is the core of it, really. What I want to ask you before we go into accountability, Shagufta, because social media is truly, I'm not going to call it a problem, but it truly is intergenerational. You've got, as you said, a lot of people came online last year, and there's also social WhatsApp. My mom's on WhatsApp, and you've got teens going on. So as your page, Muslim Family of 5, and a home educator, how has that played out in that kind of intergenerational arena? You coming on last year and your teens being, I guess, to an extent, whether those values or lack of values are a little bit more targeted towards. Because we know they're going for the youth. They always are.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. I don't think the youth are necessarily more vulnerable than older users of social media. I know myself and my kids, we have sometimes compared, your phone tells you how many hours you've spent on social media or on your phone, specific apps. And sometimes my teens are doing better than I am. So if anything, they're actually much more in tune with their mental health, I'd say, than, say, people my generation. And I would actually look at it positively. Yes, it appears as though social media throws open this wide chasm between the youth and the older generation. But maybe we can look at it instead positively as a bridge between the youth and older generations. And I think social media allows us to understand the youth better, and it allows them to understand us better. I'm talking there as a parent of teens. I've understood, there's elements of understanding that have come through social media. And the youth, they are the future. They have a lot to contribute. Through all my work with the youth, I've always found that I've learned a lot from them, and they've always impressed me with their desire to do the right thing, to change the world they're living in, and be a real force for action. I'd say, activism is very much alive with the youth, and they don't have any fear, which is really nice. They're not actually scared of very much. It's really refreshing and really inspiring. And I think, social media breaks down a lot of those barriers and enables, people my generation and the youth, for us to actually work together for some of the same causes, which it's really nice. It can only be a force for good.
Inshallah. And I totally agree with you, because I do coordinate some volunteers and who are definitely youth compared to me, and most of it is a lot of our campaigns is going online. And actually for myself, that work is the youth that perhaps aren't on the right track, criminal justice system, prisons, for those of you that know, that want for change, as you mentioned, that kind of challenging the system without fear is very much prevalent in them. And it's absolutely right. It's more about not being facilitated or guided a particular way. It's not just, this generation is correct, that generation is incorrect.
Yes.
We don't live in the Islamic society. The whole generations are incorrect. It's about guiding in appropriate place. So touching on that, we're going to go to accountability. And I think it's actually set up accountability very well. We've seen, so I'm just going to really go through because I don't want to miss what I want to say, because I think it's quite key. Social media has really brought to the fore social justice, or rather how socially unjust the world is. You've mentioned activism, and a lot of it's not online, a lot of collective, a lot of communities, a lot of the hadith comes to mind of when you see a munkar, stop it with your voice. Many people have been able to do it, and do it much more so through their online voice. Do it in groups, do it with Josh, what's the English word, guys? Like, just do it with like real passion, zeal. That's it, and do it together, inshallah. Zara Shakir saying, yes, it has really exposed reality as it unfolds. Absolutely. And there are certain things that we know mainstream media will not report. Last week, the hadith was mentioned, but it was in relation to mental health, when the the ummah. When a limb hurts, the rest of the ummah should get like a fever, a sickness. I apologize that I paraphrase, guys, but I think we're all familiar with that. And you go on social media and you look at what's not reported and what's happening, and honestly, the ummah's limbs are getting devoid of proper leadership and solution, getting gangrene. That's the only analogy I can provide. But alhamdulillah, alongside that, we've got so many people saying, no, we don't accept this. It's part of our Islam, taking that Muslim accountability and taking it to the fore and having conversations with each other. There are some issues with that, of course, as there is with everything. Unfortunately for the Muslim sphere, we see a lot of social justice, what do you call it, SJW, social justice warriors, or we're kind of, not happy with the posts, so sometimes things aren't being verified. Other elements, and this may be, I do say actually, sometimes you've got other organizations who are very good at organizing, so we support those causes, but the organization itself may be affiliated with something very non-Islamic. So where does that come about, really? I think so. What I do want to touch upon on the two areas of accountability is that it can be worked really, really well. And then on the other side, you've got people that really take a back seat. So I'm going to split the question. I'm going to ask you first, Farhana, to tell us what is accountability? Because we do have Muslims on there. So we have non-Muslims who are really organizing the collective. I think one great example is the children outcome that happened recently in America, and many people, rightly so, were very skeptical to say if the whole world was watching, that wouldn't happen. But on the other side, we've mentioned, I mean, I don't want to say you influencers whatnot, but we've got a lot of blogging, a lot of happening on social media, and Muslims saying, I only represent myself. I'm not a scholar. This isn't on me. So looking at that whole sphere of how it's used, the positive, because we don't want to just go on negative, but the other element of kind of taking a step back. Farhana, can you tell us what is accountability? It's a big word, but what actually is it in this world? And I'm going to come to Shagufta, and I want to speak about the how is accountability. So Farhana, please, and you guys as well, tell us your thoughts.
I'm going to talk about accountability from the perspective of, how we see social media being used in terms of, like you said, as an alternative to the mainstream media choosing not to cover things. And I'm going to do less talking. I'm going to give you some words from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But I think one of the things is that, yes, social media has definitely highlighted, like you said, that there is, about the plight of the ummah. And also I think it's really refreshing to see that all of those barriers that have been put in, like things like nationalism and even these notions of, I only represent myself and things like that, all of those things have basically, they just come down. I don't think they exist necessarily on social media. And also the fact that this idea of ummah, even, it's something that doesn't readily leave us, and it's one of the things that when it comes to Islam, it's something that is the way that Islam has shaped our hearts, just the way that shape the way that we think about things. It directs the way that we do the way we do things, and even about what is it that we're going to be talking about as well. So the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that indeed the believers are like a structure, each part strengthening the other. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he clasped his fingers like this. And that was in Bukhari. And you already mentioned the hadith about that the parable of the believers in their affection and mercy and compassion for each other is that of a body. When any limb aches, the whole body reacts with sleeplessness and fever. And he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that whoever relieves the hardship of a believer in this world, Allah will relieve his hardship on the day of resurrection. Whoever helps ease one in difficulty, Allah will make it easy for him in this world and in the hereafter. Whoever conceals the faults of a Muslim, Allah will conceal his faults in this world and in the hereafter. Allah helps the servant as long as he helps his brother. And that was narrated in Muslim. So I think, accountability, there is, and when you put that together with the the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, I think gives a really clear picture about the way that actually the brothers and sisters out there feel about their accountability. You know, they're really working hard, and they're really using these spaces, really going out there to basically be a voice for people who don't have a voice. I mean, you're looking at the Muslims, the Rohingya, that have basically had to, well, they've been kicked out of, you know, a country that they've known to be their home, and nobody will take them in. You're talking about the Uyghurs. If you didn't have those brothers and sisters who are, you know, bringing that awareness, we wouldn't really know what's going on with them. Then you've got the Muslims in China. You've got the Muslims in Kashmir, where we know that there's been, you know, a block out in terms of media. They don't want to let anything go out. You know, the list is long. And even in the West, where we live as well, you know, it is becoming increasingly difficult. You know, Europe has got like a widespread, you know, hijab ban, and there's a lot of hostility as well. And you know, and I think all of these are basically highlighted and talked about extensively through social media. And I think that's a representation of the accountability. Yes.
Jazakallah khair.
Yeah.
Sister Khawla has given us another great comment about accountability. We're responsible for what we say and do about ourselves, about others, protecting the honor of your Muslim brothers and sisters, concealing people's faults. And I think she makes a point that just because you're on social media doesn't mean you won't be accounted for it, that we won't be accounted by Allah. Whatever we do, good or bad, even an atom's weight, we'll be accountable. And I think that, yeah. And I think with me, that whole idea, because one thing I see, and it really raises a question in me, spaces where other stuff is shared, and there's a little disclaimer, these are Muslim spaces. We do not endorse these views, or they're independent views. And I just, for me, puts a bit of fear in it. It's like, if this is a space we've created, can we really say we're not promoting this? And is that something that when the day comes that we can use that as our response? Oh, I'm not accountable because I didn't promote it. It just happened to be there. And it's no dissimilar to life in general. We know that when we go out there, we're in halal places, we're in haram places, and we know where to go, where not to go, or how to navigate certain areas, inshallah. And I think the other element as well is, I don't know about you guys, I don't think I can ever be comfortable that my right shoulder's got enough deeds racked up. So if social media can allow me to do that, if we can be a voice for the voice, and I think that really sticks out because there's not anywhere else that's been spoken about. Unfortunately, every Ramadan it's become traditional to put the posts about what's going on in Palestine as the plight is heightened. And at the very least, if we're aware, we can do dua. We know what we're doing dua for. You know, your heart goes out to it. So alhamdulillah for that. So I wanted to ask you, Shagufta, as we mentioned, thank you so much for letting us know what the want is, and those hadiths really brought it home. And I'm glad you had the actual words of the hadith, not paraphrased. Sister Shagufta, I guess, so how do we say? I know one thing that popped up is we've spoken about algorithms. It's that thing, you know, you go shopping for something and then everything has a pop-up ad for it. Instagram, or if you accidentally watch a reel and then everything of that has come up. And we've had conversations, a lot of people before Ramadan. It was actually my Quran teacher that gave us a tip. Go onto your Instagram, go onto your Facebook, mute certain accounts, unlike certain things, do the unfollow, kind of do a clear out. So then your explore page as well, I think Jiba mentioned earlier, and Islamic values just coming up. Actually, we can kind of set that up. We can look at how to adjust those algorithms. But yeah, so it's just a good looking at all of that, social justice, and just generally the use of online world, social media. How do we stay accountable throughout? I guess, the pragmatism of it all.
Yep. Okay. Jazakallah khair. I just want to pick up where Farhana left off. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that the believers are brothers. And one of the books I've been reading this Ramadan has been a translation of some of Imam Ghazali's work. And he spoke about brotherhood, and he said that this brotherhood is actually a contract between two Muslims, such that certain duties must be fulfilled. And, he said that our Muslim brothers and sisters, they have rights. They have rights over us, which extend to, touching our property, our person, our tongue, and our heart. And he went on to discuss 8 duties, which included material assistance, personal aid, holding one's tongue, and also speaking out, forgiveness, prayer, loyalty and sincerity, and also relief from discomfort. So, Shamoly, you touched on it yourself a little while ago. You spoke about how, mainstream media is often very, very selective about where it sends its journalists and which stories get attention. And however, on social media, that's not necessarily the case. And one of our viewers commented just now how social media has actually made the ordinary people on the ground the journalists now in many, many newsworthy situations around the world. And so we see raw footage, we see lived experiences which are unfiltered, and these demand the world's attention. They demand, humanity to look at these things and react with a force to change. Just to name a few, the Palestinian occupation, the systemic racism that's been brought to, the forefront just this past year, something that's been happening for the past 10 years continuously now, the Arab Spring, even ethnic cleansing. Farhana, you mentioned the Rohingya, but when I was a teenager myself, there was ethnic cleansing that happened in Europe with the Bosnian Muslims, but it was not reported on to the extent where now, what the Uyghur population of Muslims or the Rohingya Muslims are going through. It hasn't been reported to that extent because social media didn't exist in the same way then. Even now, we still don't have all of the stories of the Bosnian Muslims. So, social media really has, that's where our accountability lies. And I just want to go on from there to a personal, a very personal accountability we have as well. Social media has meant that we're actually in a very, very enviable position now, where we have at our fingertips so much Islamic knowledge. We have access to the Quran, to the Sunnah, to content which not just gives a translation, but actually then explains that guidance in all matters of our private and public life. And it's available to us on demand. Whenever we have free time, we can go on and access this. And we need to take this opportunity. And this is what we will be accountable for. We need to take this opportunity to gain that knowledge and engage with it. And this is what social media actually really, really allows. The viewers today are doing it. They're engaging with us. They're engaging in this discussion. And, Imam Ahmad was asked, how long will you continue to run like these young people? You talked earlier about the intergenerational aspect of this. And, how long will you run like these young people to seek knowledge? And this is something for somebody my, age and even older. And he replied, I will take my ink pot to my grave. So it never ends. And social media is interactive. We can ask questions, we can explore deeper, we can share our own insights and comments, we can discuss to actually not just become knowledgeable and know things and have information, but actually to gain an understanding, to understand that knowledge and to understand the true nature of Islam and the wisdom of the Sharia rules and the principles. Because really knowledge is of no use to anyone unless we've understood it in such a way that it's actually going to affect us until it affects us, how we think and how we act. And it should cause a change in us first and foremost, and then everything we see around us as we share and spread it through social media. And again, the scholars of the past, they showed us how to do that. They showed us how knowledge was not something for them to benefit from, but they used their knowledge to enjoin the good and forbid the evil, to account justice and demand that the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ be implemented. And, we are inheritors of that work. We are inheritors of that work. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, about being a community that calls for what is good, urges what is right, and forbids what is wrong, and it is those who are successful. They are the successful ones. So that's, in a nutshell, that's where our accountability lies. I don't know if Tani wants to add to that, because it's not always as simple as that, is it?
I think sometimes it is. Sometimes we overcomplicate. Sorry, I know you asked Tanya, but I think there is an element of, it's kind of there on the tin. And we've actually got a couple of comments coming in. Sister Zara Shakir said, it's impressive that we recognize we have access to social media. Then we have to rush to this too, and in order to learn and spread the haqq of the deen. Sister Khalwa mentioned that you made an excellent point, that even if people are not journalists, they can upload, share their news stories, analysis, what's happening around the world. And you hear these things like, oh, what's a share going to do? What is awareness? But in actual fact, it can be everything. And we know this. And I'm very happy that you mentioned about looking to our predecessors, because if we're doing this, we don't do it blindly, guys. As we mentioned in every show, we come back to Islam. There are rules. We follow that. We look at how those have done it previously. And they may not have used social media, but I think you just said it, they learned, they took the knowledge of Islam, they used the resources available to them, and then they spread it back out again. So yes, Tanya, please, your thoughts on anything you want to add, and also maybe how we interact, how the joining of the online and the offline, because we are humans after all.
Yeah, just very quickly, because I know that I'm aware of the time, but I think that one of the things that I just wanted to just add on was the fact that what I think this whole issue of accountability is I think, even when you want to take it down to an individual level, I think that, we can all be vehicles, and we can use whatever is at our disposal, in this case, online platforms and these different social media spaces, where we are in control to some extent of the choices that we make in terms of who we like, who we share, who we follow, what we're going to be talking about, what we're going to be raising. And also the fact that we have a responsibility as well to, speak out for the people who are not in positions, the people who are oppressed. And of course, Islam it demands that justice as well. But I think as well, we can't forget the fact that these social media platforms, they're owned by certain people as well. So I think there is an issue of, accounts getting closed down, shadow banning, just to kind of, to some extent, put us, zip it, basically. And we know that is also going on as well. And I would say that shouldn't dishearten us. Actually, the way that we should respond to it is by opening up another account and, going forthright and sort of not losing that intention and not forgetting what our overall purpose is, which is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's to seek his pleasure and to renew all of that, basically. And, don't take that kind of knockback sitting down, inshallah, and continue.
Inshallah. Thank you so much, ladies. So I think it's just time to wrap up. Thank you so much for your time, and you guys as well for tuning in. And I think in a nutshell, it has benefits. We are accountable. That's about as much as I can simplify it. But just like everything else, as we walk through the world, we're not like, I'm accountable here, I'm not accountable there. We know our Islam, it gives us a higher station. It does. And I think what they say, account yourself before you are accounted. And in that same way, and I know myself, sometimes I do, it's easy to get lost in social media because how close it is to you. Ask yourself the question, guys. Have a staff meeting with yourself. Just stop and be like, is this, at the very least, if it's not going to be something of benefit, God forbid, that is something of harm. That's the base level. But of course, we aim for higher. And Allah, everything He's given us is in His infinite mercy. He's given us rizq, these resources to benefit, to stack up those deeds, to be able to go to Him and inshallah say, at least I tried, Allah, I really, really tried. So the benefit He's given us, let us use that in a beneficial way, not a way to just get lost. And may Allah accept from us. And again, jazakallah so much, ladies, for joining us, for your insight. I hope maybe we'll rejoin again down the line about further topics. I know we've said there's a lot of topics going on right now, but thank you. And you, everybody as well, so much. If you found this beneficial, please share. And then join me next week on the last of the series. Unless, of course, you want to see us again. If you want Chat Minus the Chai to carry on, let us know. and what topics you want to address. But next week, it is a very special show. I will be having my Quran teacher, and we will be discussing Quran, the compass for the believer. So as you may have seen, the thread that's gone throughout is always Islam, what directs us, what guides us. And Ramadan is the month that a lot of us get closer to the Quran, we read it. But is it simply reading it as a mushaf, as a book, or reading the words? But what actually is it truly to believe it, to live the deen through this guidance that Allah has given us, again, in His mercy. So we're going to be talking about that next week, but it's going to be a little bit special because I need you guys to get really, really involved. We're going to be reflecting together. So inshallah, I will see you then next Saturday. That's the 8th of May, perhaps the 27th night as well. And right here, Human Aid, Facebook or YouTube, 4 p.m. So until then, Assalamu alaikum.